VSiN Weekend Morning Line on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Hour number 2 of the VSiN Weekend Morning Line. Good morning. I'm your host, Tim Murray. Goodness gracious. What did we see last night? What a game. Houston, the improbable comeback. Look, I was confident all the time. I definitely didn't text Matt Humans continuing to be upset about the fact that Houston had no shot, or texted other people that all you got to do is play money line favorites and just pair them all together. None of those tests exist. I will not show you my phone. You can tweet me at @1TimMurray if you'd like to chime in there. It is a congratulations to Paul Stone, the champ. He is victorious. We had Paul on the show yesterday. There was a glimmer of hope from our guy, Jonathan Von Tobel. I had a Hail Mary chance. I don't know who had a better chance. Houston down 14 with 8 minutes to go, or me down 3.5 points with 3 plays to go. But I have been eliminated. Paul Stone, your winner of the Circa College Hoops Challenge. We've been doing this since early February. Thanks to Matt Humans for putting this thing together, as he's done now for 3 consecutive years. And hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We went through a lot of the plays here on the show, specifically on Saturday. And one more play. You will get all the plays from all the handicappers tomorrow, available via your VSiN Pro email. And I'm sure Matt and JVT will talk about it on VSiN primetime tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern, before tip-off at around slightly before 9 o'clock. But Paul Stone, your winner, 29-19-1, the record with one more play to go. 7-1-1 is the best bet record. So Paul Stone joins the likes of Will Hill and David Deneen as champs of the Circa College Hoops Challenge. And now, for me, for your boy, look, I got a family to feed, and that $200 to Dom DeMarcos here in Las Vegas is pretty appealing. So right now I sit at 27-21-1. We've been fortunate to have a pretty good run here. We were able to get Houston +5. We got Auburn and Florida to go under the total yesterday. So a 2-0 Final Four for us, and it has been a nice run. So I sit at 27-21-1. I am currently 1 point clear of JVT and a 1.5 points clear of Aaron Moore, and we will see how this all plays out here over the final pick, which will be due tonight. JVT, if you're listening, I'm probably going to go Houston. I think that is the way I'm going to go. Haven't slammed it in just yet, but that is more than likely the horse that I've ridden here to this point, and I will probably be on Houston. But one more selection from the handicappers, and I'll say this, strong ending for a lot of us, 15 in total, and 10 of us right now all are above or at 500. So strong finish, and hopefully we can continue to finish strong here with one more pick to come in the Circa College Hoops Challenge. But once again, Paul Stone, kudos to you, sir. Heck of a performance. 7-1-1 on his best bets, and his best bet yesterday was Houston plus the 5. So he has clinched the victory for the Circa College Hoops Challenge. And hopefully for your boy, I can get myself a little gift card to Dom DeMarcos here in Las Vegas, as I currently sit at second place at 27-21-1. All right, we're going to talk to Wes Reynolds coming up in just a little bit. We'll get Wes's favorite plays for today, maybe a little early Masters thought here or two, reaction to what we saw yesterday. And you got to know, Wes is going to be in tuned on the Women's National Championship, which tips off at 3 o'clock Eastern. UConn right now a 6.5 point favorite over South Carolina. How did the books fare? Patrick Everson coming up bottom of the hour, as Patrick always great with the latest insight from all of the books across the country. Scott Van Pelt at 12 Eastern, so noon Eastern. It'll be SVP, and then Rob Doster live from San Antonio at 12:15 Eastern. And I'll say this to Rob, and I'm not afraid of giving people their due. There's a lot of great content out there from a college basketball standpoint. Field of 68, those guys do a remarkable job. And as soon as every game ends, they're there with live reaction. They've got interviews. They have some really, really good folks a part of that. So Rob and Jeff Goodman and John Fanta and Matt McCall, and I'm going to leave out some names, but they do an awesome job. So just want to give them a little love because the Field of 68 continues to do it, man, and they do it at an exceptional level. Speaking of an exceptional level, how about Walter Clayton Jr. and what he has done through this NCAA tournament? You know, we talked about it briefly yesterday. There were 3 stars heading into the Final Four. Cooper Flagg of Duke, John A. Broome of Auburn, and Walter Clayton Jr. of Florida. And for Broome and Clayton, and this is no knock on Cooper Flagg. He's awesome. He's going to be the number 1 pick. And he, by the way, I know he missed the fadeaway jumper. You can't take anything away from him last night. That dude was phenomenal in the losing effort. And I thought the 3 that he hit from the corner to make it 64-55, the only field goal that Duke had in the final 10 minutes of the game was that corner 3 from Cooper Flagg. I thought that was it. I thought, all right, game over. Maybe we can sneak in the back door with a cover here, but not the case with the Houston Cougars. But Walter Clayton went for 34 last night. And I've mentioned the stat, and I'll keep repeating it because it's just ridiculous. Jared Burson pointed this out on social media. Walter Clayton is the first player with a 30-point game in the Elite Eight and the national semifinals of the same NCAA tournament since a young man from French Lick named Larry Bird did it in 1979. So Walter Clayton joining the rarefied air of Larry Bird. First player to do that since Larry Bird. You might be thinking, what about Kemba Walker? So I went back and I looked it up because Kemba, of course, in 2011 had the magical run through the Big East tournament where they had that epic win over Syracuse in the semifinals at the Garden, and then made the run to the national title. His big games, believe it or not, from a scoring standpoint, came in the second and in the Sweet 16. So he had 33 against Cincinnati in the second round back in 2011. Three-seed UConn beat Cincinnati, the 6th seed. And then the 3 in UConn beat San Diego State, the 2. He had 36 points in that game. And believe it or not, Kemba Walker averaged just 18 points per game in the Elite Eight, Final Four, and the national championship as the Huskies won that title. But Walter Clayton, man, he is on another one. Had the clutch shots against Texas Tech. Had a remarkable performance yesterday with 34 points. Walter Clayton following Florida's 79-73 win last night over Auburn.
They was kind of showing hard all night. I think it was Cardwell. Yeah, Cardwell left a little early on one of them, so I was able to get the shot up. And then, Tommy had knocked down one of those top of the key threes, and that kind of forced them to not stay as long on me because Tommy, Kondo, all of them were making plays. So just like I said, the guys around me making plays allows me for my game to open up, and I appreciate them.
Just one of the performances, one of the storylines that we're going to remember. You think about some of the iconic names from NCAA tournaments past, right? Whether it be Shabazz Napier and their improbable run in 2014 with UConn, or Kemba Walker, or even Steph Curry making a household name for himself back in 2008, even though they didn't make it to the Final Four. Walter Clayton Jr. is now becoming that name. And win or lose on Monday night, he's a name that I think is going to be etched in NCAA tournament lore. And when you can be in the same breath as someone like Larry Bird from 1979, you're doing something pretty special. And that's what we saw and have continued to see from Walter Clayton. So, when those point props start to pop, I imagine plenty of people will be looking to go over on that. 5 of 8 from 3 yesterday for Walter Clayton in the 79-73 win. And, you saw Duke last night, 1 field goal in the final 10 minutes, and Auburn in that first half, you wondered, all right, is this sustainable? They were so phenomenal from an offensive standpoint, and it just felt like they ran out of gas. And if you were one to get to the window, catching the points with Florida at halftime, I think the live line was like 4.5 or something like that. You felt pretty good because right away, before the first media timeout, in the second half, the game was tied at 49 apiece. So 46-38 went to 49-49, in 3.5 minutes. And that's what this Florida team has done. As you think back to the Texas Tech comeback, down 9, 3 minutes to go, that lead evaporated, right? Couple of big threes from Hawk, and then it is Walter Clayton Jr. with one of the more phenomenal plays where he's inside the arc, takes a couple steps back, bang, ties the game up against Texas Tech. The guard play for Houston versus Florida, my goodness. I mean, that I will pay lots of money to see with those guards going up head-to-head on Monday night. Let's hear from Todd Golden on the play of his superstar, Walter Clayton.
It's pretty incredible, man. We worked pretty hard to get here, and in 3 years, been fortunate to build a great staff that is aligned and that works really hard for each other. And then we've just accumulated a great group of guys, in our roster. And, it took a little bit to get all these pieces together, but, to a man, they all pull the same direction. There's no unselfishness in our locker room. You see a guy like Walt, he gets asked all the questions and gets all the attention for a great effort like tonight, but there's no animosity there. There's nobody, concerned about that. These guys are just trying to win a championship, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of what our program is, and the strides, that we've made over these past couple years.
Yeah, that's another one of the unique points of the NCAA tournament. We hit on it a little bit in the third round when you had Nelly Davis playing for Arkansas, you had Vlad Golden playing for Michigan, and then Elijah Martin for Florida. Players from that FAU team that made the run to the Final Four just 2 years ago continuing to play. And Elijah Martin, that dunk where he looked like the jump man to slam it on home, and Seth Greenberg even alluded to it. Elijah Martin, big performance yesterday as well in that victory. We're going to talk to Wes Reynolds here in just a moment. But hey, folks, if you're ready to get in on the action, First Bet has got you covered. Visit firstbet.com. That's the number one, stbet.com, and use the promo code VSiN200 to save 20% on all your wagers for the first 60 days up to $200. Don't miss out. Start betting today. Firstbet.com. Wes Reynolds, he joins us next.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
We keep it rolling here. It is the VSiN Weekend Morning Line. I'm your host, Tim Murray, live from the Circus Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas. The sports never stop, and that's the beauty of sports. And this network is, we had a great game last night. We get to eat it a little bit and say, all right, now we have a championship on Monday. We have another championship today in UConn and South Carolina on the women's side. And, hello, friends, we've got the Masters coming up as that gets rolling on Thursday. Scott Van Pelt will be down there in Augusta. He will join us coming up top of the hour. And a gentleman that I know will be called upon by many of us here at VSiN. Who do you like? Who do you like? Who should we bet? Is our own Wes Reynolds, who joins us right now on the Progressive Guest Line. Mr. Reynolds, what a night it was. And it was funny hearing Ian Eagle last night as they showed Jim Nantz. Jim Nantz got a lot of love last night, the Houston alum, and he dropped a hello, friend. So you got the warm and fuzzies inside for you with the Masters. Be honest with us. Is this one of the more challenging weeks for you as a golf handicapper, because you've been red hot, but now this is when people's eyes are like, all right, Wes, give me the winners.
Yeah, Tim, it is a busy week, and thanks for having me on. But the Masters, it's kind of ironic, Tim. It's the smallest field of all the majors, even though I think you have 94 players in pending, depending on the Valero result this afternoon. And it's the major in terms of picking it outright that I think I've had the least success with probably over the last decade. I've had the most with the U.S. Open and the PGA, because the Masters, it's so tricky because it's the same course. It's not a different course like the other three majors every single year. So you think that would make it easier, but guys that are in like lousy form can come here and play very well. So, breaking it down, and then plus the fact that it's the first major of the year. And then you've got some guys that are going to be contenders that, of course, are playing on Live. They're at Doral this afternoon for the final round of their event. So, yeah, it can get a little bit tricky where you can't go too much on recent form, because we've seen guys that, have missed several cuts, or guys that don't look like they have their game, and then they figure it out somehow at Augusta.
We'll get to Masters here in just a moment. Some early thoughts from Wes. I know you've got some content over at VSiN.com already up, but let's circle back to what we saw last night and the improbable comeback from the Houston Cougars. And I'll ask the question to you that I asked to Seth Greenberg in the first hour of the program, which is, I don't know what to compare last night to for Houston, because there's part of me, Wes, that thinks maybe this was like Wisconsin in 2015 that pulled off that win over Kentucky, felt like they slayed the Dragon, and then lost to Duke in the national title. Or is this 1991? Duke beats UNLV shockingly, and then they go out and they beat Kansas in the national championship. What's your kind of thought early on Houston heading into the game tomorrow night, knowing that they just had this magical and improbable comeback against the Blue Devils?
Tim, I think it might be more the latter, and maybe I wouldn't have thought that, because I know you'll recall you and I the night before Thanksgiving sat and watched this team.
We did.
Very, very much up close against Notre Dame. I saw them a couple times out here in Las Vegas. By the way, Houston lost 2 or 3 games here in Las Vegas. So you're like, how is this team here? Well, they're here because they're probably the toughest team in college basketball, and they don't give in. And you know, when Kelvin Sampson said last night, hey, we'd been here before, it's like, no, you haven't. You've never been in the Final Four, the national championship game. Well, they've been in that situation a couple times this year where they were down, especially on the road. And in the Big 12 on the road, I think the Big 12, look, the SEC might have been the number 1 conference this year, but there's not a tougher conference, I think, in the country in terms of the road venues than the Big 12. And you really see it. Like even the mediocre to lower teams, it's tough to win on the road. But Houston's been up against it a couple times on the road. Remember against Kansas, they were way down, found a way to get into overtime. Then it happened again. Then they found a way to get it in a double overtime and pull out a win. Same thing at Arizona, where they were trailing most of the game and then found a way to win a close one. Same thing at Iowa State. So Houston has been here before where they get down, but the defense stays constant. No matter what the deficit is, no matter what the lead is, the defense is a constant. The rebounding is a constant. They out-rebounded Duke by 11 last night. Duke with, 3 lottery picks and likely top 10 picks, and Houston out-rebounded them by double digits, and they just kept getting stop after stop after stop. Duke didn't have a basket in the last 10, or had one basket rather in the last 10:31 of the game. So Houston's got some dogs, and they have guys this year more that are shooters and shot makers rather than just shot makers like they've had in year past. And I think you saw that late last night. Sharp was huge late after Cryer kind of carried him the whole game and kept him in the game. But Sharp was huge. Uzan had foul trouble, so we didn't see that last night. But we've seen that many times this year where Uzan can bail him out with a 3. And I'm likely going to be on the Cougars tomorrow. I think it's going to be the latter, Tim. I don't think it's like, oh, man, we beat Duke, like that's our championship, and then there's a letdown. I like the Cougars tomorrow. I'm going to keep riding with Houston.
Yeah, I was on them yesterday, and let's just say, I think most of us did not anticipate, let alone the outright win, but the cover to even happen there. But Houston, as I said earlier in the show, they're like a villain in a horror movie. You got to kill them like 10 times in order to ultimately get victorious there. We're joined by Wes Reynolds, courtesy of our Progressive Guest Line. Look, I know both these teams have bigs, and Florida is one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country. But look, we're going to tune in tomorrow night, and we're going to look for Richard, Clayton, and Martin versus this backcourt of Houston, of Cryer, of Uzan, of Sharp. I mean, this backcourt showdown is going to be one for the ages. And Walter Clayton, I've mentioned the stat a number of times. He joined some rarefied air of your fellow Indiana brethren in Larry Bird, as he's the first guy to have a 30-point game in the Elite Eight and the national semifinal since 1979. So what do you make of this Gators squad who is failed to cover, Wes, 4 straight first halves, but they've turned it on in the second half when they've needed to in these last 4 games?
Well, they're very good, and they're very deep, and they obviously have a lot of size. But Duke had a lot of size, and Houston was able to make do of that. But this is a team of giants with Chenlu and, of course, Condon. Hanlington only plays a few minutes off the bench, so they're going to have to deal with the size. So it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge on the glass. But one of the things that you and I observed, Tim, when we watched this Houston team up close over there at the MGM Grand Garden Arena is they talk better on defense than anybody. They communicate on defense. They call out screens. They call out switches. They let you know you have help. We saw Kellen and Kelvin Sampson constantly calling defensive adjustments and signals from the bench because we were sitting up just behind the scorer's table. And this team communicates, and this team, knows how to defend and get stops, and they just put clamps on you. And Florida, this is going to be a challenge because this is probably the best defensive team that they had faced, much like with Duke last night. Duke had not seen that kind of defense, especially when Duke had a lead late. And Duke, it's like, we'd never seen a press before. You'd never seen anybody pressure because they're up in every game. So nobody's pressing them because they're up 15 and the game is over. So Florida is going to have a little bit of a challenge, even with the SEC. Now, they've seen Tennessee. They did split with them in the regular season and then beat them in the SEC tournament. But I think Houston might be just a little bit different than Tennessee in that regard, and the fact that they've got multiple shot makers offensively. So, look, got a very good game tomorrow, and you can make a case for either side, but I'm going to make it for Houston.
Yeah, I'm going to be on that side as well. Wes Reynolds joining us here, courtesy of our Progressive guest line. In Tampa today, Wes is as one if you are a VSiN Pro subscriber. Wes, he's fires, man. He knows a lot about all things, and I'm sure we'll be putting some baseball plays in. But on the women's side, we've got UConn out to a 7.5 point favorite against South Carolina. We played a clip earlier in the show from Dawn Staley, who kind of reiterated saying, look, last year it was all about Caitlin Clark. We were undefeated. We won the game. And this year it's all about UConn and Paige Beckers. And she just wants, maybe this is a motivational tactic to try to get their rightful due. Of course, these two teams played a little over a month and a half ago in Columbia, and UConn smashed them. What do you make of the national championship today? Total 133.5, and the Huskies laying 7.5 against the Gamecocks.
Yeah, the pressure is on for Paige Beckers here because one of the all-time greats at UConn, certainly accomplished with all the individual accolades, but trying to win a national championship and follow in the lead of all the greats in that program. I think they get it done today. Now, this is a high number, though. I'm seeing 7.5 for a South Carolina team that's probably been the best program in women's college basketball over the last 4 years. Probably the way I play this, if I do get involved, Tim, might be like a money line parlay. Might take UConn on the money line because I do think that they get the win today, and put that with the Nebraska over there in the college basketball crown, which they might, by the way, if they're going to do that next year, schedule them games at a different time window and not go into the national the Final Four. That's a big time programming faux pas. But Nebraska would be who I would look at, because Nebraska, I think, can make it a half court game. And look, we've had all of these games go over there at the Crown this week, pretty much. Even UCF and Villanova, who's slow as molasses, that went way over. But now that there's a championship on the line, you may see it when it gets late, where teams go more in the half court, and I favor the Huskers in that regard.
He is Wes Reynolds. Make sure to check out all his content regarding the Masters later on this week. Hey, just a reminder, check out the VSiN Watch app wherever you get your apps, the Google Play Store, Apple App Store. You could watch, listen, and check out show replays. We'll talk to Patrick Everson. He'll join us next.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
Yes, indeed. We keep it rolling here. It is the VSiN Weekend Morning Line. Thanks, as always, to Wes Reynolds for jumping on the program. Of course, make sure to stay tuned to vsin.com for all of Wes's Masters content. And check out the Long Shots podcast with Matt Brown, Kelly Bidlin, and Wes later on this week for their Masters preview. Speaking of the Masters, a gentleman who will be on the call of the Masters later this week, Scott Van Pelt. He will join the program coming up top of the hour. We will also check in with Rob Doster from the Field of 68 in hour number 3 as well. But without further ado, let's bring in our next guest, courtesy of our Progressive guest line from Vegas Insider. You know him, you love him, you see him around town doing his videos. It is Patrick Everson at @PatrickE_Vegas. And Patrick, I think I was in the same camp as a lot of odds makers that you talk to, which was, here we go again, going to be 2 more favorites. Florida gets the win, gets the cover. Duke is up 14, and I'm thinking, I can't believe it. I did it again. I'm trying to go against the behemoth, and little do we know, Houston comes all the way back. So from the folks that you talked to last night here in town and across the country, how good of a result was it that Houston ultimately came back and beat Duke?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on this morning, Tim. Let's start with where you started. It was like, okay, this is happening all over again.
Yep.
The favorite money line parlays are going to roll. I was talking to Scott Shelton at BetMGM Nevada with, I don't know, maybe 6-8 minutes left. And whenever, as you noted, Duke up 14. And everybody at that point, I'm sure you included, and a lot of your viewers expected this to end with a Duke-Florida matchup. And Scott did too. And what he said to me was, it's a disaster. We're going to get killed tonight. We got killed in the first half. We're going to get killed on Duke's second half. Then we're going to get killed on Monday night, and we're going to get killed in the futures. So and I think we all kind of anticipated that. It looked like Duke had that game very much under control. And then just the incredible minute and 20 seconds or so that takes place at the end of regulation there. Look, foul or no, there were a couple of other opportunities for Duke to salt that game away potentially, and they didn't. It was just stunning. So then I followed up with Scott Shelton and a host of others, as you mentioned, and he said a complete collapse by Duke was just what we needed. So and he noted that seems like the first good result since the tournament started. Now, that's not true. There were a couple of other good results, but it speaks to just how chalky this tournament has been. It's certainly the first good result since probably, I would venture, the third day of the tournament, the first day of the second round, because really the third round didn't go the book's way, and we know that the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, and then the first game of the Final Four, you kept getting favorites winning, so bettors, the public betting masses, were riding those money line parlays. But yeah, that was one really good comment that Scott had. I talked with Rich Zanko. He is the head of college basketball trading for Caesar Sports. And I thought he had a really good comment. He says, it feels like the Houston Cougars committed a felony stealing that game down the stretch. But that said, it's a felony that Caesars was quite happy to see committed, and so was BetMGM and a host of others. I mean, a lot of books had really big, significant liability to a Duke national championship.
Now, Patrick Everson joining us here, courtesy of our progressive guest line here on this Sunday morning at @PatrickE_Vegas. Make sure you follow him there. He's got great insight, as always, there on his social media feed. What about earlier in the night? Was it a situation where kind of, here we go again, Florida wins, they cover? I know our friend Dave Sharapan was tweeting out, the waterfall video there of people probably going to the book to take Florida in the second half. So how was that Florida result for most books across that you talked to?
It's probably what you anticipated. I actually did a video right behind you there from Circus Sports pregame before the Florida Auburn game. And Jeff Benson there said actually really good two-way play there. They were, I think he said, a little bit better to Auburn than Florida in the futures book, but I don't think they were too worried about it there. But others certainly were. John Murray at the Superbook, he told me with about 6 minutes or so left in the first game, in the Florida Auburn game, he noted that we were actually discussing the Houston Duke game. And he said, well, look, we need Houston outright, and we really need them outright if Florida wins. So I think that tells you where the Superbook's position was on Florida. They were certainly not looking good to the Gators. And as I alluded to, some of the comments a little bit a few minutes ago that I mentioned from Scott Shelton at BetMGM Nevada, they were definitely looking for Auburn as the very modest underdog, but as the underdog to win outright there. So Florida winning and covering the number was certainly good for the bettors in that one. And like you said, and I think even a couple of books mentioned this, they loaded up on Florida at halftime thinking a comeback was coming, and it came very quickly. And then Florida just kind of kept them at arm's length most of the rest of the way.
Yeah, I can only imagine, as you pointed out, and I think a number of us have talked about, and odds makers that have joined the show here, the fact that Houston did win that game outright was massive for all those money line parlays that I'm sure you got around plus 125, 130, whatever it was there. Patrick Everson joining us here, courtesy of our progressive guest line. I can't imagine it's going to be the same handle as we saw last year with Caitlin Clark being in the championship game against South Carolina, but you got UConn, you got South Carolina, you got two pretty high-profile programs coming off of a big night of college hoops. What have you heard regarding today's UConn and South Carolina game? Right now, UConn around a 7.5 point favorite in the national title.
Right. I think first what I would do is go back a couple of days before the Final Four there and note that BetMGM, among others, had said, Seamus McGee at BetMGM handles a lot of their college basketball stuff, men's and women's there, and had noted that they really needed both dogs outright on Friday night. So obviously that did not happen. And I think they've got significantly more liability to a UConn national championship than they do to a South Carolina national championship. So BetMGM, among others, is probably rooting for South Carolina to get the repeat title tonight. And in fact, Seamus McGee, I'm going to back up 1 second here real quick. He said slightly more interest on Houston early against Florida in the championship game. So backing up just a moment. Literally just said that. Breaking news right here.
Wait, so repeat that about Houston and Florida real quick?
Yeah, I apologize. He just said it, so I thought I'd throw it in. Slightly more interest coming in on Houston, plus 1.5, minus 115. Nothing much to the total yet. Okay. So a little bit of a lean toward Houston early there. So I'm sorry, but just figured it was worth throwing in since it just popped up on my phone. Getting back to this championship game, though, between UConn and South Carolina, there are a couple of sizable bets that BetMGM has on South Carolina, despite possibly wanting South Carolina to win. 25,000 at plus 320 and 100,000 at plus 275. So that futures bet cashes out $275,000 if South Carolina gets a repeat title today. As far as wagering on it at BetMGM right now, a lean toward UConn and ticket counts on the spread. And as you noted, that number's gone up a couple of points. 60% of bets at BetMGM, 77% of money on the spread is on UConn. And then a little bit of the reverse of that on the money line, looking at that, the plus money, the plus price on South Carolina. You got tickets almost 2-1 and about 60% of money on South Carolina. So some back and forth, some public bettors hoping that they can get a nice little payout on a UConn upset as the number 1 seed against number 2 seed UConn.
Patrick Everson giving us the latest from behind the counter, as he always does, at @PatrickE_Vegas. All right, Patrick, before I let you run, I'm a DC guy. It was fun on Friday night to see Alex Ovechkin tie the great one with 894 career goals. And today, I talked about DraftKings, and you've got some insight from different books out there. Minus 120 is the price for an anytime goal. I imagine that is going to be peppered at DraftKings. This puck drop is at 12:30 Eastern, Caps and Islanders. What have you heard regarding Alex Ovechkin props here today?
Yeah, this is going to get peppered everywhere. DraftKings, circa right behind you, whatever they have up on this, I'm sure will get hit and across town here in Vegas and across the nation. So I got this this morning from ESPN Bet just a little while ago. Alex Ovechkin over 0.5 goals. So basically Alex Ovechkin to score a goal is the most bet player prop across all events, all sports on this Sunday by total handle at ESPN Bet. And it's the second most by total ticket count behind Aaron Judge to hit a home run. So Aaron Judge is getting the most tickets of all these player prop bets today, but Alex Ovechkin is taking the most money to get a goal. And ESPN Bet is also offering, method of goal, whether it's even strength or power play, and even the period of the record-breaking goal. So, and they've probably got a menu that goes beyond that, and I'm sure a lot of other sportsbooks do as well. So everybody's going to have their eyes on Alex Ovechkin today for sure. Yeah,
there's no doubt about it. Hey, Patrick, always appreciate the insights, sir. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, great show today. What a lineup, man. I am way out of my depth. Never for the powerhouse. You fit right in. But we are indeed having a great show. There he is, Patrick Everson. Scott Van Pelt going to join us here in 20 minutes. Rob Doster as well in the third hour of the program. Just a reminder, if you are a VSiN Pro subscriber, we've got a great offer going right now. $59 all the way through August 1st. You get access to our exclusive betting splits, both from Circa and DraftKings. We'll tell you about those betting splits next here on VSiN.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
We keep it rolling here on a Sunday morning. I'm Tim Murray, live from the Circa Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas. Coming up top of the hour, Scott Van Pelt, of course, from ESPN, will join us, give us his thoughts on the national championship game, the Masters, maybe a bad beat thought or two. Is, I don't know, last night, if we had one person chime in on Twitter, and you can always tweet me at Tim Murray, that said he had under 136.5 last night, and it closed 137.5, landed Houston and Duke at 137. Our good friend over on Twitter, the Palm Readers, at Mike Palm Readers, said, all right, time to bring on football season. Not sure I'll ever experience a longer summer after what transpired last night. And I asked, did you have Duke futures? He said, surrounded it in bracket pools. Duke over Florida, Florida over Duke would have won him some pools out there. So I know that is a tough pill to swallow, certainly if you're in pools that are out there. You had Duke as your champion, whatever it may have been. But if you had Houston or a Houston future, you're feeling pretty good here. You're dancing a little bit. We'll get to my thoughts on the championship game here in just a moment, but I want to circle back here to what Patrick Everson just discussed, which was the Alex Ovechkin chase for the record. And UBS Arena on Long Island, I always mess that up, on Long Island today, Islanders and Capitals, and all eyes are going to be on Alex Ovechkin, who, by the way, the price for him to score an anytime goal against the Chicago Blackhawks on Friday night was outrageous. It was like minus 140. I think it closed at some shops. Maybe minus 130, I think is what Johnny Avello told me it closed at DraftKings. And he scored within 4 minutes. Today, it's minus 120. Now, it is worth noting, there's an opportunity, if you do want to bet the other side. And right over here at Circa, and if you're in Illinois or in Iowa, wherever, Colorado, and you have Circa, and I'm sure there are other books that offer the no price. Would the no be the way you'd want to go? Do you want to go against history? Minus 120 on the yes, minus 110 on the no for Alex Ovechkin. Puck drop is going to come up at 12:30 Eastern. We will certainly keep our eyes on that game as it starts here, and we'll see if Alex Ovechkin can break the record held by Wayne Gretzky, 894 career goals for Alex Ovechkin, 2 on Friday night. But as we played you earlier in the show, had an opportunity to break it with a hat trick on an empty netter. He said, nope, not going to do it. Needs to be a goalie in net. So once again, don't get cute when it comes to the player props out there. He does not want to break it on an empty net goal. Alex Ovechkin, as Patrick Everson just let us know, ESPN Bet, it is the most bet prop of any prop for today, which I don't think should come as a surprise, but maybe a little bit, considering it is a hockey game and you've got a full list of the NBA. You've got college basketball going on today on the women's side, and a full list of Major League Baseball games to happen. But tonight, or this afternoon, I should say, Caps and Islanders at 12:30. A little bit after that, there at UBS Arena on Long Island. All right, let's get to best bets. As always, best bets brought to you by our friends over at G Bank, the official bank of VSiN. And for me, immediately as Houston defeated Florida, I thought, all right, as I've asked multiple guests today, is this going to be a situation where Houston is going to have a bit of a letdown? Look, I love letdown spots. I'm a big situational spot guy, as many of you know, especially in college football, college basketball. Hey, you have a big win. How do you respond to it? It feels like, look, it's a national championship. I think from a motivational standpoint, from a letdown standpoint, you're not going to get much of that. But I'm going to be on Houston here. I'm going to continue to ride the Houston Cougars. I bet them to win the Midwest region, albeit at I could have got a better price if I had done the old rollover parlay, because Houston didn't get any breaks, right? They played Gonzaga, then they played Purdue, then they played Tennessee, and it's worth noting that this team in Houston, as Bart Torvik pointed out, could be finishing off one of the more incredible runs to a national championship. There were no shortcuts. As Bart Torvik pointed out, screenshotting Ken Palm's numbers, which is kind of funny to note, they played Gonzaga, number 8, Purdue, number 15, Tennessee, number 5, Duke, number 1, and historically speaking, from a standpoint of Ken Palm's database, the second best team ever in the last 30 years. And then they would finish it off by beating Florida. Plenty of people out there, I understand. You can't go wrong betting Florida. It's a pick'em game. Right now, slight lean towards Florida. But I'm going to be on Houston here. I bet it last night at even money on the money line. Look around. I think you could probably find that price out there. You could certainly take the point. If this game lands 1, I'm going to kick myself in the rear end here. But I'm going to be on Houston here. I'm going to believe in this Cougars squad. I think it's going to be a hell of a game. Probably, let's be honest, with the way that you can look at this game, you could probably live bet it. But I'm going to be in on Houston pre-flop, and we'll see how the game unfolds. Once again, pointing out the fact that Florida has not gotten off to great starts so far in this NCAA tournament. Down 8 yesterday at the half to Auburn. Up by 2 against Texas Tech, or up by 3 against Texas Tech. Up by 2 on Maryland. Tied with UConn. This has been a team that's kind of slowly got it rolling there, and ultimately, of course, won and took care of business in those games to get to the national championship. And I'm going to be on Houston here in this spot tomorrow. Give me I'll be on the money line. I took it at even money last night after Houston got the victory over the Duke Blue Devils. Just a reminder, our best bets, as always, brought to you by G-Bank, the official bank of VSiN. G-Bank is upping the ante with up to a $750 bonus for new G-Bank Visa Signature Card customers. First, new customers who spend $1,000 on eligible purchases within 90 days from account opening receive a $250 bonus. In addition, if you spend $50,000 on gaming and sports app loads within the 30 days of account opening, you'll receive another $500 bonus. That's a potential of $750 of bonus cash. Apply now. VSiN.com/GBank. VSIN.com/GBank. So as the college basketball discussion has dominated this show, I would say rightfully so, we're creeping closer to one of my favorite events of the year and has been for a long time. And then when we incorporated betting into it, it became even more fruitful, and that's the NFL draft. And while there doesn't seem to be, at this point, a ton of intrigue for the number 1 overall pick, it seems like things got a little more solidified yesterday with this tweet from Todd McShay. So Todd McShay, draft analyst, of course, now doing work with The Ringer, longtime at ESPN, pointed out yesterday on social media that it's pretty much a wrap when it comes to the number 1 overall pick. He said, so the Titans have respectfully canceled private meet workouts with Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, making it all but official. They will take Cam Ward number 1. And now, and this from Todd McShay, I'm starting to hear more and more about Hunter to Cleveland. That would mean Abdul Carter versus Shedeur for the Giants at number 3. And then on the bottom, not a difficult decision, in my opinion. So as we look at where we are, and we're going to start seeing more of these draft props start to percolate here over the next couple of weeks, it feels like at this point, and the odds would reflect it, that Cam Ward is going to be the number 1 overall pick. Right now, Cam Ward minus 5,000 to be the number 1 overall pick. The curiosity now begins of what do the Cleveland Browns do at number 2? And Todd McShay pointing out and saying that it seems more than likely that right now the Cleveland Browns are leaning towards taking Travis Hunter at number 2. So do the Giants go out and get Abdul Carter at 3? Or, despite signing Russell Wilson and signing Jameis Winston, do they go and grab Shedeur Sanders? So I think that's where we're going to start going. By the way, you can look at some draft props right now over at DraftKings, looking at, where over-under on draft position. And if you're wondering, Shedeur Sanders over-under right now is 8.5. And if you think he could go number 3, plus 160 to under 8.5. Does Shedeur see a little bit of a drop in the NFL draft if he doesn't go number 3? Back to the college hoops and the Masters. Scott Van Pelt, he's going to join us top of the hour. Rob Doster also in hour number 3. It is the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.